Hi everyone, this is Felix Lutsch from Chorus One. I'm here today to talk about liquid staking, opportunities and challenges of staking derivatives in DeFi. So first of all, a few words on myself. I'm working in business development with Chorus One. We are one of the top validators on Cosmos and also active on a lot of other networks and provide staking services, for example, on also Solana, Terra, Kava, some other Cosmos blockchains, but also in other ecosystems. So today I wanted to talk about liquid staking. We wrote this liquid staking report back in June that was supported by the ICF. We also did start the liquid staking working group around that. That is on Telegram. So if you're interested in this topic, feel free to join. We still have a little bit less frequent conversations in there than we used to have, but there's still a lot of members that are interested in this field and that share resources around that. So feel free to join that. I will share a link later, and also the report itself. So most of this talk will actually be a little bit taken from the report and maybe with some new observations that kind of came up in between June and now that weren't considered when we wrote the report initially. So yeah, to start, I wanted to just kind of start with the agenda. I don't have that many slides, so I hope this will be the half an hour, but maybe we'll have some time for questions, or maybe even a small break for people that have been watching for a while now already. So to start, I think first thing I kind of wanted to define liquid staking. I want to go into like why would you need liquid staking? Why should you do it? Kind of taking a little bit of analogies from Ethereum DeFi, what has happened there, especially now this summer, and how does it kind of apply to liquid staking maybe, or how could you see like do different similar things that what happened in DeFi now with liquid staking, and what does it bring? Then there's our taxonomy that we established for the report that I will go through. That kind of helps you classify a little bit. Maybe if you see some solution that has token or staking derivatives or liquid staking, you might wonder, how does this fall under in this taxonomy? Because there's quite a different ways to approach this, quite a lot of different ways, and we try to kind of separate them out to better understand the problem. And then finally, I want to kind of go into like the main challenges that we also uncovered in the report, and quickly go through what they are and why they are challenging, and maybe also a little bit how they could be addressed. So yeah, first of all, what is liquid staking? So basically, this is a graphic that's also taken from the report. It's just kind of like super simplified, trying to show what happens in liquid staking or staking derivatives. So there's a lot of the current staking module on Cosmos, for example, works in a way that you have your atoms, you send a special transaction that basically locks the atom in escrow, and you stake them with the validators. So actually this part only right now here, for example, would be how it currently works in this schematic. And the liquid staking idea is that essentially you build like almost like a pool that does the staking, and that pool or that contract issues kind of a derivative token that represents your balance in that pool or in that contract. So by doing that, you can have basically the derivative token while at the same time like already taking the derivative token maybe elsewhere, move it to other exchange, put it into some other protocol. A lot of fun things become possible if you kind of adopt this design, but there's also a lot of challenges around it, and there's a lot of different ideas of how to build this, especially in Cosmos, where on the hub directly there's no smart contract support. So essentially, a lot of people that have been thinking about this had to either think, how could one maybe change the current staking module, or how could one do kind of this pattern maybe from another chain, or in some other way to make this possible, this design. So why would you want this? I kind of mentioned it already, right? You get this derivative token that represents your balance in staking. That has a lot of kind of advantages. You can now, once you have this token, if it, like, let's say it's just there's no problems that I will later come to. you could just maybe move that. You have like a staked atom, right? You can move it into like maybe a lending protocol, right? You could borrow the staked atoms. You could lend the staked atoms and basically earn kind of a double yields. Potentially, you could provide liquidity. So instead of trading the atom right now, right, maybe the pair could be with the staking derivative, that instead of trading the atom directly like the native asset, you would then trade the derivative and then basically be able to provide liquidity while at the same time earning staking rewards from like securing the blockchain. So those are like a few use cases that become possible, and it's really there's no limits to the fantasy here. Almost it's kind of this basic principle that is around in DeFi of this idea of money Legos, right? You basically have a lot of these protocols, and they can interact with each other, and you could also add basically staking to this mix with if you have staking derivatives. That's kind of the idea around it, right? So essentially, right, we could also imagine maybe like more complex products built on the basis of this, say, derivative token. So maybe you want to better hedge the risks. You want to like build like insurance into it. You want to maybe tranche it. Because in staking, obviously there's the slashing risk, right? Maybe you only want like some part of the holders of this token kind of absorb the slashing risk but earn a higher yield. So kind of like a senior junior tranche model. You could potentially build all this around liquid staking and allow stakers basically to manage their stake positions better than what they currently have to do, which is essentially like they are very kind of restricted to what the protocol allows them to do. That's often also like on purpose. So on Cosmos, there is the unbonding period, like most of us know about it. There's this actually there in like almost all proof of stake implementations in some form or another. So for example, on Avalanche, maybe there's not necessarily like a unbonding period, but there is a kind of period of time that you kind of have to specify how long you want to stake. So maybe it's like 6 months, 1 year. You can't withdraw before that. So essentially, this restriction is there because it's needed for example, to prevent like long range attacks where maybe like some validator would be malicious and get slashed, and the offense is only detected later, or also it helps with light kind friendliness. So there's a lot of reasons why this is there, but for people that stake, it essentially comes with a lot of problems that you have to wait, for example, 21 days if you want to unbond your atom, you want to sell them. Now to do this, you will first need to unbond it, and right, if the time comes you want to sell, normally you don't know in 21 days in advance when this will happen, right? So what liquid staking essentially also tries to solve is basically allowing you to exit your position maybe at any time you want at a discount, or maybe also not, depending on how many other people want to like get into staking and maybe buy the token from you. There is also so that's basically like a high level overview. There's also like an extra added thing that the UX actually is improved a lot in staking. So I want to talk a little bit about this. So basically, a lot of the staking currently involves a lot of interaction from the user. So on Cosmos, we know people that stake on Cosmos know that at least you choose your validator, then you start to accrue rewards in the reward pool, and every now and then you will need to like claim the rewards and you will restake them again, so you have like can make use of the compounding effect. That is all basically done manually. With a liquid staking model, essentially this could be much simplified and essentially just mean you hold the staking token. That has a variety of benefits. Actually, it can also help you, or might bring more users in, right? It's just much easier to stake. It's much easier to also kind of support staking on a different blockchain, right? If you just have to like add a token instead of adding all these staking transactions, it becomes much easier for a wallet, for a custodian, for anyone really to integrate staking, and thus making it more interesting maybe for people to stake and just bringing staking more on the map, and also making more interesting for people. So I kind of want to also mention maybe like some other. So many are familiar with this Cosmos model of you have to kind of restake your rewards. there are also other implementations. So from working on some other chains, also with Anthem, our staking platform, we realized there's a lot of difference in the staking models, and some of them really have a horrible UX. So for example, on Celo, as a not bad about Celo, but it takes a lot of transactions to actually begin staking. So you need to basically instantiate your staking contract first. You need to then make the staking the votes, and you need to activate the votes, and the activation can only happen in the epoch after you staked. So there's really a lot of burden for the user, and it really stops, I think, a lot of people from even trying to stake. And by changing the model in this way, maybe that could improve the UX. Also, obviously, the core benefit of not having to wait for this unstaking period or unbonding period, how we call it in Cosmos. Instead, you could potentially have instant liquidity, right? If the staking token, the staking derivative token is traded widely, you can instantly sell it on some decentralized exchange or even a centralized exchange. And similarly, that is kind of part of it, right? The access and integration into DeFi. So you really can more easily use these tokens in some other ways. So that is kind of core of DeFi. I kind of want to go a little bit into what analogies maybe from Ethereum from last year, that we really have seen a lot of activity in DeFi and a lot of innovation happening there. A lot of things are also similar in a way to liquid staking. So that's why I want to bring it up. So really, I wanted to first talk about Compound. So if you look at Compound, essentially, really the growth in Compound started when they introduced Compound version 2, which introduced the C tokens. So C tokens, Compound, first of all, is a money market protocol where you can borrow and lend crypto assets. So you supply one asset and borrow another one against it. And if you do this, you can you will receive now in the version 2 of Compound, or like for a while actually, you receive a ERC20 token that represents your deposit. So if you would deposit DAI, maybe you receive C DAI, and that automatically accrues the interest or that you would make if you were lending the tokens. And really, this pattern, I think, has helped a lot in this first initial growth in the Compound protocol. So you can see in May, before it was there, it was like around 20 to 30 million. And then the initial growth kind of probably, I think the C tokens did a part of this, kind of kickstarted the higher value locked in summer 2019. Obviously, there was now this year a lot bigger increase at these stages where the comp token essentially was introduced. So the liquidity mining incentives actually had a much larger impact. But I think the C tokens also did their part. And in some sense, the liquidity mining also becomes more interesting with staking derivatives. I'm going to kind of go into this now. So I guess a lot of people here are familiar with Uniswap or SushiSwap and the saga there. So basically, in an attempt to kind of build a competitor to Uniswap, which is this simple AMM, SushiSwap introduced this liquidity incentives that they gave out their sushi token to people that staked the Uniswap LP tokens is initially on their platform. So when they did this, so Uniswap holders also, if they deposit into the pool, if you're liquidity providing, you receive a LP token that kind of also represents your share in this pool. So similarly, again, to what liquid staking tokens would do, or what also seed tokens do in Compound. And essentially, SushiSwap, and I think also a lot of other of these liquidity mining projects made use of this pattern, that essentially they allowed you to stake these LP tokens on their platform and then receive their token, and kind of slowly kind of drained the liquidity. So also on SushiSwap, there was first this period where you only stake the LP tokens, and then essentially there was some other incentives to actually move and deposit exchange pairs into their pools, where you would get more tokens. And another example, for example, is the usage of C tokens in token sets. So token sets is this basically protocol to build portfolios of crypto assets that can rebalance, and so basically like ETFs or whatever you want to think of. And they, for example, also integrated the C token. So one of their sets, for example, is a set that automatically rebalances ETH and CUSD. CUSDC, so interest earning USDC. And basically what it does is that said specifically, it kind of switches whenever the market indicators basically say this is Ether might be overvalued or is this undervalued. And then they use the compound, instead of just using normal USD, they use USDC so that basically the set holders can also receive interest on their deposited dollars, which is really cool. It kind of highlights this composability aspect that becomes possible, that would also become possible with liquid staking tokens. Then I wanted to quickly, basically this is the taxonomy for liquid staking tokens that we came up in the report. So the report can be found at mirror.chorus.one/liquid-staking-report.pdf. I will also share it. I think right now while I'm sharing my screen, I cannot do it, but I will do it straight after when I take some questions maybe. Really, there's a bunch of, we basically identified a bunch of different ways how you could essentially do this tokenization of staking. We differentiate between native and non-native. So native in this sense means that it's built into the protocol in the sense that there is no other model of staking. So essentially, if you think about Compound V2, that is potentially, you could call it native in a way, because the protocol automatically gives you this C token. There's no other way to obtain that. In the context of staking, right? That might be that when you do the staking action, you receive a validator specific staking token. That there's kind of this delegation voucher idea that we built with Sika in June last year, and that also like some other people have picked up on and have built similar things. Or one idea that was similar, that's bHarvest idea that doesn't have tokenization, which essentially sees people trading their delegations directly with each other. So that has a bunch of other implications. If you would do it like that, if there's no tokenization, you would actually need to like directly exchange the delegations. That makes it maybe less liquid. I mean, I will actually come to these points in a minute. And then there's also non-native, which basically means the tokenization happens through like some set of smart contracts, or like a set of smart contracts on the same chain if it's a smart contract chain. If it's not a smart contract chain, it might be like coming from outside. So there could be a separate chain that does this. So that was initially the idea of Everett, that's now not there anymore. But for example, Anchor Protocol still kind of work around that idea that there are these different liquid staking assets that then can be used in the lending market. So actually, Anchor Protocol is kind of an example also already that would make use of liquid staking tokens to kind of give a higher yield to people using the money market. So pretty cool protocol. There's a lot of other examples here in this part or this category, because that's like the one that most people pursue. They build their own project. So for example, Akala on Polkadot allows you to deposit dots, and then you receive like a liquid dot token, and the Akala system essentially stakes on behalf of all these dots for the participants. So Akala has some governance that basically decides on the operators or the validators. Similarly, Lido has actually a similar model. So that's the ETH2 staking solution that kind of allows you to do the same thing. So you deposit ETH, you get staked ETH out, and also the Lido system has its own token that allows you to choose which node operators will be the ones that run these nodes for the system. There's a bunch of others, like Rocket Pool, for example, also Ethereum Stuffy, which is kind of like a general purpose project that tries to do this for many chains. And then there are kind of, I wanted to contrast these ways in a way with the other categories. So one is synthetic staking. That really means it's kind of an idea we had essentially that, right, you maybe don't even need to really stake to have the same outcome. So it could just be like a financial agreement that just essentially swaps the interest reward rates, and you have the same outcome than you would actually stake, but it's a synthetic asset. Same for our different ways is custodial liquid staking. So this is really when there's no decentralized protocol that issues the token, the tokenized version of the staking token. It's basically done by regulated entities. So one example here is StakerDAO. StakerDAO is a project that springs out of the Tezos ecosystem that essentially does this in a regulated structure. So they will allow you to, or they will buy on the market essentially the staking token, stake them manually, and then do like a buy and burn to with their blend token, which actually also kind of accrues different chains, and then has like a specific model how to weigh which chain and which validators to choose. And then you basically have just one token that represents like cash flows from these different chains and staked with different validators. But that is basically done in this regulated manner, which also means it's very restricted and kind of not as easy to integrate maybe in DeFi applications. Then finally, the contrast, the unspoken enemy of the liquid staking, or maybe why liquid staking actually is most needed, is exchange staking. So essentially, an exchange can do everything that you might want to do in liquid staking by like tokenizing on not by tokenizing, but by integrating it on their platform staking, because essentially they will stake all the customer funds from their accounts, but for the customer on the exchange, they can still trade between the customers. For example, it could also be integrated in other services of the exchange. So maybe you could use it as collateral to lend. These are all examples that actually exist. So that is really why I think liquid staking is a topic that we need to talk about. I think also Zaki already mentioned it. It's still, not that much has happened. Maybe there needs to be more effort to push this forward again. And I think, that's basically what I also want to kind of do with this talk again. So quickly wanted to talk about the challenges. I see actually this is longer than I expected. So we'll be able to hopefully do like 5 minutes and then have a little bit of questions. So the main challenges actually are often around that validators in staking networks are fundamentally different. So there's different slashing risks associated with validators. One validator might be up longer than the other and earn more rewards. So really, if you go about it naively and issue one token for every validator, they will all be different, and you won't be able to easily kind of trade them with each other, and that will also impact liquidity. So really, a goal for a liquid staking solution might be that you kind of accrue different validators, or make it somehow possible that there's not like 125 validators in the Cosmos case, or maybe even more in other chains, but like less. So a lot of projects do this by basically having this DAO structure that the DAO, the governance token, basically votes on who are the validators. But there could also be other models, obviously. Then value divisibility, that is kind of the challenge of having it actually tradable in fractions. So a tokenized version might be easy to do that. But for example, in the example I mentioned with bHarvest, there is a problem that if you want to have to exchange the entire staking, the allegation you have, it becomes less liquid again, right? Because you have to either buy the whole 100 items I'm staking or none of them. So it's kind of like this difference between NFT and ERC almost. So that's also something that needs to be figured out. Composability, that's essentially, right, the more this idea that I mentioned, that you can use this liquid staking tokens in some other DeFi context. Then I think other challenges are a little bit more around what does it do actually to the network? How does it impact security and the governance process? So really a challenge might be that, is liquid staking actually gonna kind of centralize again the network by like, because the big validator, their tokens, their stake derivative tokens might be more liquid, so there's less of a discount on there, so more people will buy that. So that is obviously a problem. The network security issue is there because it's essentially, it might introduce like systemic risk into the system if now the staking tokens move all over the place and are used in other DeFi applications, or maybe it introduces like perverse incentives for validators. I kind of, we touch upon that much more in the report. So if you're interested in this, please check that out. Same for governance. So there's also often the idea that of this vote buying, and maybe something like liquid staking tokens would change the governance model essentially that we also have in the Cosmos Hub right now by removing kind of the people that stake from the governance votes maybe, and in that way also make it more easy to buy votes or to kind of have the governance rights with people that maybe aren't even interested in it. And then the final challenge is kind of to create a transparent system. So often it might be difficult because that if your system is really complex, maybe no one understands it, and then you might not know if the staking liquid staking, if there's actually kind of something backing it or not. So this is like something that's quite important in designing this. I wanted to finish this before I take some questions, is basically with this slide. So essentially today, Justin Drake, so the main researcher at ETH2, posted this. So that 10% of the, or 11% almost of the deposits in ETH are from Kraken, and actually Kraken is not even like one of the bigger exchanges in terms of how much ETH they hold. So right now, I think there's probably like 1.5 or 2% of all ETH in staking for ETH2, and because of the design that ETH2 has with this long phase where essentially only after 1.5 years or something your tokens might become liquid. Here it's even more easy to see why exchange staking is so much better, because like if I'm on an exchange, they will stake it, and if I want to take like liquidate it, I can do it before. I can potentially even trade against normal ETH on the exchange, and I'm not like locked in forever with this staking. So this is really, I think, a sign that we might need liquid staking sooner than one might think. Same, I also wanted to mention, I think Zaki also already mentioned it, how exchanges have been accruing more and more stake on the Cosmos Hub. So for example, it's 15.57% of all staked atoms are controlled by exchanges, and on Kava it's even a little bit more. But yeah, trend upwards, especially for the chains that are around longer and that have like been listed and so on. So in the beginning, often this is not so much a problem, but it becomes more and more over time. So I think that's why we think, I think liquid staking is a very crucial step, or very needed in this ecosystem right now. I think that's it. Here's my data. If someone wants to reach out and kind of talk about this topic, if they're interested, I'm always down to do this. I'm gonna stop sharing. If that, oh yeah. And see if there's questions. I don't see in Ask Question, I don't see anything. I'm gonna share the link to the report that I mentioned earlier. So that's there, and maybe the Telegram also for the group, if someone's interested.
Okay, perfect. You actually got the timing perfect. It's exactly on the dot.
Nice.
Right.
Cool.
So we're gonna transition to the next session now.
All right, cool. See you guys.
Yep.